There is a substance flowing within you, the most sacred and subversive that humanity have ever identified. But for 2 millennia, religious institutions have reduced it to a symbol. G.W. Carey called it the oil of Christ. Yes, the Gnostics knew it as the sacred secretion. Modern scholars dedicated his life to showing that true enlightenment does not come from above, but from the transmutation of this secretion, produced cyclically by the pineal and pituitary glands. What became rigid doctrine was, at its origin, a map of the body, the 33 vertebrae of the spine, the degrees of internal ascension, the 33rd degree of Freemasonry. Golgotha, the place of the skull, is not just a physical mount, but the exact point where this force culminates within you. The Gospel of Thomas, banned for centuries, reveals that the Christ to be followed is internal and is born within your own nervous system. But you have been trained to waste this oil through distractions, vices, and illusions. This secret was never lost. It was systematically suppressed, disguised as faith, ridiculed as pseudoscience, and sealed under empty liturgies, maintained only by tradition, not by transformation.
George Carey articulated this in 1920 in his nearly forgotten book, God-Man, the Word Made Flesh. This insight exposes the foundational deception that organized religions have propagated for 2,000 years. The notion that salvation originates externally from a crucified savior, an enlightened guru, or a sacred institution, when in reality, the biological mechanism for enlightenment pulses within the spinal column of every individual. At this very moment, medical science has meticulously mapped the brain structures involved, identified the released neurotransmitters, and documented the physiological shifts that accompany what ancient traditions refer to as the second birth. What George Carey, a physician and researcher, uncovered in the early 20th century by deciphering biblical allegories should have revolutionized both religion and neuroscience. However, it was systematically disregarded because it threatened the institutional control over spiritual matters. The Christic oil, mentioned in sacred texts, is a tangible, measurable secretion produced by your pineal and pituitary glands in specific cycles dictated by lunar positions. When the moon transits through an individual's birth zodiac sign, a piece of information readily available from any astrological calendar with mathematical exactitude, these glands enter a state of heightened production, a phenomenon understood and consciously explored by ancient initiates. This fluid, imbued with unique neurochemical compounds, naturally descends the spine via the central channel, dissipating into the routine activities of daily life. Every outburst of anger, every unfulfilled sexual climax, every instance of alcoholic intoxication literally consumes this precious substance, trapping the individual in a state of ordinary consciousness, akin to a computer perpetually running in its most basic, safe mode. What makes this revelation particularly unsettling is its pervasive presence across diverse cultures. The ancient Egyptians meticulously documented this process within the 33rd degree of Osiris's initiation, a number not coincidentally matching the vertebrae in the human spine. The Hindus, with remarkable precision, described the path of Kundalini through the nadis and chakras, mapping each energy center to its corresponding nerve plexus. The Gnostic Christians, prior to their systematic eradication by the Roman Church, openly taught that Christ lived 33 years to symbolize the complete journey through each vertebral segment, culminating in the resurrection at Golgotha, meaning place of the skull in Aramaic, a direct reference to the process occurring within the cranial cavity. Samuel Ayenor, considered the reformer of modern Gnosticism, synthesized these fragmented insights into a practical system in the 20th century. His revelations concerning the master glands as the biological Joseph and Mary, perpetually generating the Christological birth, were later corroborated by research into endogenous DMT production by the pineal gland and the altered states induced by specific meditative practices. Modern neuroscience, without fully realizing it, has partially validated what mystics have perpetually known. The human brain is a complete internal pharmacy, capable of generating natural psychoactive compounds under precise conditions. The question that should deeply trouble any earnest seeker is why this knowledge has remained concealed. The answer points to a conspiracy not of clandestine meetings, but of institutionalized ignorance. When you grasp that you can initiate your own internal transformation without intermediaries, without mandatory contributions, and without subservience to ecclesiastical structures, you achieve spiritual autonomy. And spiritually autonomous individuals are impervious to control through the fear of eternal damnation or the promise of celestial reward. This process requires no blind faith. It necessitates a precise understanding of lunar cycles, the discipline to conserve vital energy, the skill to consciously redirect it, and the courage to confront the internal psychological guardians that protect each stage of ascension. The sacred mantras such as Yao, Enri, Om, and Krishna are not arbitrary incantations, but specific vowel frequencies that generate measurable resonances within the cranial chambers, facilitating the production and circulation of these vital fluids. The evidence is literally etched into sacred architecture. Gothic cathedrals, with their twin towers symbolizing the master glands, their central nave representing the spine, and the altar within the sanctum sanctorum corresponding to the cerebral thalamus, where mystical union occurs. Every authentic tradition has left behind a map. It remains to be seen if contemporary humanity will muster the fortitude to follow it to its ultimate conclusions, discovering that the kingdom of heaven, as Christ explicitly stated, has always resided within us, not as a spiritual balm, but as a neurobiological reality awaiting conscious activation. The priestly class of ancient Egypt safeguarded a secret that could have irrevocably altered the trajectory of Western civilization. Within the deepest chambers of the pyramids, concealed from the gaze of the uninitiated, they imparted the knowledge that the resurrection of Osiris was not a mythical narrative concerning distant deities, but rather an operational manual for awakening the divine power latent in every human being. The 33rd degree of initiation, the identical number of vertebrae comprising your spinal column. Is this a mere coincidence? Only for those who have never connected the dots, which modern religions have assiduously ensured remain separate. That serpent depicted emerging from the foreheads of pharaohs in every Egyptian tableau, the one archaeologists casually identify as the uraeus, marks precisely the location of your pineal gland. Now, as you absorb these words, understand that the Egyptians were not engaged in mere decorative artistry. They were documenting a tangible process of brain activation that transformed ordinary individuals into beings possessing capabilities we would now deem supernatural. And they were not the sole custodians of this knowledge. On the opposite side of the globe, the ancient sages of India described this very phenomenon, albeit using different nomenclature. The Kundalini, the fiery serpent dormant at the base of the spine, is not merely a poetic spiritual metaphor designed to impress Westerners at yoga retreats. It is an actual bioelectric force that can be quantified with contemporary instrumentation when activated. The yogis delineated 3 primary energetic conduits within the body, one feminine, one masculine, and one central, corresponding precisely to the nervous systems that Western medicine would take millennia to discover. They understood that when these 2 opposing forces achieve equilibrium, something extraordinary transpires within the central conduit, something that permanently reconfigures consciousness. The earliest Christians, those whom the Church of Rome actively pursued and systematically eliminated, were also privy to this secret. The Gnostics, a designation that literally signifies those who know, were condemned as heretics, not for espousing falsehoods, but precisely for possessing too much knowledge. Their Gospels, deliberately omitted from the official biblical canon and concealed for 2,000 years in desert jars, unveil a profoundly different interpretation of Christ's teachings. Within these texts, discovered serendipitously in 1945, Christ does not discourse on salvation through faith. Instead, he advocates for the awakening of the inner Christ through specific practices involving vital energy. He who drinks from my mouth shall become like me, and I myself shall become him. Jesus states in the Gospel of Thomas, "This is not metaphorical poetry. It is a technical directive pertaining to the consequences of consciously preserving and elevating the sacred oil produced within the brain." The Gnostics understood that when Christ proclaimed he would live for 33 years, he was embedding the precise number of transformations the energy must undergo as it ascends through each vertebra, ultimately reaching Golgotha, which in its original tongue translates to place of the skull. George Carey, an American physician from the early 20th century, was the first to possess the courage to publicly articulate these connections. He established that the fluid safeguarding our brain and spine, the cerebrospinal fluid, is indeed the oil of joy referenced in Scripture. This fluid, when enriched with specific secretions from the pineal and pituitary glands, becomes the most invaluable substance the human body can generate. Carey demonstrated that this oil naturally descends the spine and is dissipated through daily endeavors, but it can be consciously conserved and directed upward towards the brain during particular lunar phases. Carey's findings ought to have revolutionized both medicine and religion. However, his discoveries were met with neglect, derision, and suppression. The reason? If individuals were to comprehend that they intrinsically possess the complete mechanism for spiritual enlightenment, the entire edifice of spiritual control would crumble overnight. They would no longer require priests, pastors, gurus, or any intermediary between themselves and the divine. The medieval alchemists were also aware of this process, but they were compelled to cloak it in intricate codes to evade incineration by the Inquisition. When they alluded to transforming lead into gold, they were not referring to physical metals. The lead represented the dense sexual energy situated at the base of the spine, while the gold signified this same energy transmuted and elevated to the brain. The alchemical marriage, the union of opposites, the birth of the philosophical child, these were all veiled allusions to the phenomenon that occurs when the masculine and feminine forces within the body converge at the brain's center. Samuel Awenor meticulously connected these disparate threads in the 20th century. Following decades of personal exploration of these practices, he unveiled the common message underpinning all traditions. The core secret lies within sexual energy, not in the puritanical repression advocated by religions, nor in the hedonistic excess promoted by contemporary society, but in the deliberate transmutation of this force through precise techniques that he meticulously detailed in numerous books, readily available for free download online. Recent scientific advancements serve only to affirm what these ancient masters have perpetually known. Researchers have discovered that the pineal gland contains crystalline structures that react to magnetic fields and can naturally produce psychoactive substances during profound mystical experiences, and that specific meditative practices induce lasting alterations in brain structure. Science is finally beginning to align with the insights preserved through millennia of esoteric knowledge. All these disparate traditions, separated by vast expanses of time and geography, describe the same fundamental process because it is universally inscribed within the very architecture of the human body. You were born equipped with this mechanism. It is active at this very moment, expending precious sacred oil while your attention is fractured across 1,000 different focal points. The pertinent question is not whether this phenomenon is real. The cumulative historical, mystical, and scientific evidence is overwhelmingly persuasive. The question, rather, is whether you possess the courage to apply this knowledge and discover through direct personal experience that the divine beings humanity has venerated for millennia were simply individuals who fully actualized the latent divine potential you carry within you at this precise instant. The substance presently flowing down your spinal column holds a value exceeding all the petroleum reserves in the Middle East, surpassing the worth of all the diamonds in Africa, and eclipsing the total gold ever extracted throughout human history. And you are currently squandering it as you process these very words, simply because no one has ever instructed you on its proper utilization. This essence, which George Carey identified as the Christic oil of the scriptures, is not an abstract spiritual concept designed to offer comfort to believers. It is a genuine neurochemical secretion comprised of hormones, neurotransmitters, and specific proteins that your brain continuously generates in small quantities, but abundantly during particular lunar periods. Modern medicine recognizes a portion of this substance as cerebrospinal fluid. However, what physicians fail to disclose, often because they themselves are unaware, is that this fluid undergoes a dramatic alteration in its chemical composition when the pineal and pituitary glands are simultaneously activated. During deep slumber, near-death encounters, orgasmic experiences, and profound meditative states, these glands release compounds that transform this common fluid into something the ancients rightly termed divine. Let us address directly what transpires with this substance in the life of an average individual. It is primarily produced during sleep, descends the spine via the central channel, and is systematically degraded. Every surge of anger dissipates a significant portion. Every unfulfilled sexual climax, wasted in the sense that it could have been transmuted, eliminates the equivalent of weeks of production. Alcohol literally dissolves this essence, which is why all authentic initiatory traditions strictly prohibit intoxicants during periods of spiritual work. Excessive sugar intake, heavy meals, chronic stress, all these factors deplete this precious oil, perpetuating a state of perpetual spiritual impoverishment. Now, let us address what truly matters: your pineal and pituitary glands. The pineal gland, roughly the size of a grain of rice, situated at the geometric center of your brain, is far more than a mere producer of melatonin, as basic medical textbooks suggest. It contains calcite crystals. Yes, actual crystals within your brain that resonate in response to electromagnetic fields. When activated through specific disciplines, it secretes not only melatonin, but also compounds that scientific inquiry is only beginning to identify, substances capable of radically altering perception and consciousness. The pituitary gland, bifurcated into two lobes like a miniature pear, governs the entirety of the body's hormonal system. Yet, its role extends far beyond this. Samuel Ayenor designated it as Mary, the biological progenitor of the inner Christ. When it achieves harmonic resonance with the pineal gland, the biological Joseph, through the precise modulation of specific mantras, a remarkable event occurs within the third ventricle of the brain, the space between these two glands. The fluids originating from both coalesce, forming what alchemists termed celestial dew, and Gnostics referred to as living waters. The process of transmutation is not symbolic. When you vocalize the mantra E-O-E-E, vibrating the pineal, resonating in the heart, reverberating in the sexual organs, you are generating a specific acoustic wave that propagates through the spinal column. The inscription, Ignis Natura Renovatur Integrum, fire renews nature integrally, is not merely decorative on the cross. It is a vibratory formula that, when pronounced with the correct technique, generates sufficient pressure to compel the sacred oil to ascend rather than descend. Each of the 33 segments of your spine serves as a transformative station. The oil, commencing as a dense physical substance at the base, refines itself with each vertebra it traverses. The nerve plexuses lining the spine, which precisely correspond to the chakras described by the Hindus, function as biological distillation apparatuses, purifying and potentiating this essence. By the time it reaches the brain, after passing through all 33 chambers of transmutation, it is fundamentally altered from its initial state. The thalamus, situated at the brain's core between the master glands, represents the true holy of holies within the human temple. When the transmuted oil finally enters this chamber, what the scriptures denote as the virgin birth occurs. It is virgin because no seed was wasted, and it is a birth because a new consciousness is literally engendered within the skull. The thalamus becomes illuminated, and this is not a metaphorical statement. CT scans reveal intense electrical activity in this region during profound mystical experiences. The ancients were not composing poetry when they spoke of enlightenment. They were describing a genuine biochemical event wherein the brain, bathed in this transmuted and potentiated oil, activates normally dormant regions. Capabilities perceived as paranormal, clairvoyance, telepathy, conscious astral projection are natural byproducts of this process. You need not believe this assertion. Genuine masters have consistently advised, do not believe, experiment. The knowledge is complete. The mechanism resides within your body at this moment. The instructions have been meticulously preserved through millennia, encoded yet decipherable. The sole variable in this equation is your personal decision to apply this knowledge or continue its neglect. Each lunar month presents a fresh opportunity. Each missed cycle represents one less step on the ladder of 33 degrees that separates the dormant human from the awakened Christ. The moon does not merely influence oceanic tides. It is presently inducing tidal shifts within your very being, moving fluids that conventional medicine conveniently overlooks. The cerebrospinal fluid, the blood, the lymph, all respond to lunar cycles with the same predictable adherence demonstrated by the Atlantic Ocean twice daily. Psychiatric facilities report surges in admissions during full moons. Maternity wards brace themselves with additional staff, and emergency departments prepare for heightened activity. Everyone senses that something significant occurs, yet official acknowledgement remains absent. However, the initiates have always understood. The moon serves as the cosmic metronome regulating the production of the sacred oil. To ascertain your period of maximum potency, you require information readily available on any astrological website. When the moon, on a monthly basis, enters the zodiacal sign it occupied at the moment of your birth, it is not the vague horoscopes found in magazines we refer to, but rather fundamental astronomical principles. The moon requires approximately 27 days to complete its circuit through the 12 signs, spending roughly 2.5 days in each. When it returns to your natal sign, your master glands enter a state of hyperproduction, a phenomenon meticulously charted by the ancient Chaldeans 5,000 years ago. The preparation commences 3 days prior to the moon's entry into your sign. This is not a mystical suggestion. It is a biochemical imperative. Your body requires this preparatory interval to cleanse its channels, recalibrate hormonal output, and prepare the groundwork for the subsequent endeavor. During these 3 preliminary days, every substance you consume, every emotion you allow to dominate, every thought you entertain directly influences the success or failure of the operation. Alcohol must be completely abstained from, as it literally dissolves the oil before its upward journey can even commence. Heavy foods can impede the internal pathways. Injudicious sexual activity can deplete essential reserves before the work can begin. When the moon finally enters your sign, initiating the 2.5-day period of peak efficacy, a measurable physiological change occurs within your brain. The pineal gland, containing magnetite and calcite crystals, acts as a biological antenna, responding to subtle fluctuations in the lunar magnetic field. Melatonin production is altered, but more importantly, compounds that science has yet to fully catalog begin to be secreted. The pituitary gland adjusts its entire hormonal output, creating a unique neurochemical symphony that occurs exclusively within this specific temporal window. The duration of the physical preparations, encompassing 2.5 days, followed by 3 days of focused effort, totals 5.5 days of intense labor. This period coincides with your monthly window of opportunity for profound inner transformation. However, a critical obstacle prevents most seekers from achieving their goals. The primal energy, often referred to as Kundalini, is not a passive force awaiting gentle activation. It is akin to molten fire, concentrated electrical power, a potent force capable of both profound illumination and utter destruction. The phenomenon known as Kundalini syndrome is not a modern invention. Medical records document instances where individuals have inadvertently awakened this energy without adequate preparation, leading to severe medical crises. Symptoms have included intense burning sensations along the spinal column, unbearable pressure within the skull, hallucinations, and a disassociation from oneself. This is the consequence of engaging with immense power without understanding its fundamental laws. Consequently, psychological refinement is not an optional aspect of this path. It is paramount for spiritual preservation. Every psychological flaw you possess, and everyone carries such imperfections to varying degrees, represents a tangible energetic obstruction within a specific energetic center. The desire for carnal pleasure associated with the second energy center is not merely a moral concern. It is an energetic impediment that obstructs the upward flow of this primal force. Similarly, anger manifesting in the solar plexus is not solely an emotional issue. It is a knot that can misdirect energy into detrimental pathways. Conceit residing in the heart chakra and the illusions stemming from egoic identification in the forehead region each act as sentinels. They must be overcome not through brute force, but through profound insight and comprehension. Ancient wisdom traditions, such as Gnosticism, referred to these internal imperfections as guardians of the threshold, precisely because they literally impede passage between different states of awareness. When Kundalini begins its ascent and encounters the blockage of desire in the second chakra, the experience will not be one of spiritual bliss. Instead, you will be confronted with every suppressed longing, every clandestine fantasy, and every denied perversion. If you have not undertaken the inner work of understanding and dissolving these internal constructs, the energy will not resolve them. Rather, it will empower them. This explains how individuals who claim spiritual attainment can devolve into predatory behavior, and how revered spiritual leaders can become entangled in public scandals. They initiate the awakening of this potent force without first purifying their inner being. The Sanskrit mantra, Om Klim Krishnaya, Govindaya, Gopijana, Vallabhaya Svaha, transcends a mere devotional chant. It is a precisely calibrated sequence of vibrational sounds where each component systematically engages and purifies the energetic centers. The initial element, Klim, awakens the primal force at the base of the spine. Krishna elevates this energy to the second chakra. Govindaya facilitates its transformation in the solar plexus. Gopijana Vallabhaya broadens the energy's influence through the heart center. Finally, Svaha releases the energy to continue its upward journey towards the brain. While the mantra aids the process, it cannot substitute for the essential inner work. The true practice involves unwavering self-awareness, identifying each psychological flaw the instant it arises, and consciously choosing not to fuel it with your vital energy. The physical preparations follow a specific regimen commencing 3 days prior to the lunar cycle. Completely abstain from alcohol, significantly reduce the consumption of animal proteins, and increase your intake of pure water to 3 liters daily. The consumption of mugwort tea has been observed to stimulate the pineal gland. The active compounds within this herb are known to penetrate the brain's protective mechanisms and interact with specific neural receptors. The herb Gotu Kola has been noted to enhance cerebral circulation. Research published in scientific journals indicates that peppermint contains specific compounds that assist in the synthesis of neurotransmitters. The partial abstinence from heavy foods during the 2.5 days of intensive practice is not an act of self-punishment. When your digestive system is processing substantial meals, a significant portion of your vital energy is diverted to this process. Opt for easily digestible foods such as fruits, raw vegetables, and natural juices. These lighter foods liberate maximum energy for the transformative work. Consuming a heavy meal during the designated lunar period necessitates waiting an additional month for the next opportunity. The breathing techniques employed throughout this entire period adhere to a specific pattern. Inhale for a count of 4, retain the breath for 4, exhale for 4, and hold the lungs empty for 4. Consistent adherence to this rhythm generates subtle undulations within the cerebrospinal fluid, facilitating its upward movement. All contemplative traditions place emphasis on the breath because it is far more than simply the exchange of air. It is a vehicle for vital energy. Lukewarm baths are recommended, as excessively hot water can dissipate vital energy. Concluding with cool showers helps to conserve and direct this internal force. Every meticulously observed detail contributes to subtle energetic processes that are highly sensitive to minute alterations. This understanding represents a body of knowledge largely disregarded by contemporary society. Throughout the 5.5 days, every decision you make either supports or undermines your inner crystallization. Individuals often squander between 12 and 13 annual opportunities for this profound work. A lifetime dedicated to conscious self-improvement would yield hundreds of such initiatory chances. The lunar calendar continues its cyclical progression, offering periods of opportunity for those who commit to dedicated practice. The physical posture adopted for the work of transmutation significantly influences the outcome, even before the process begins. Whether seated on the floor or an upright chair, maintaining a perfectly straight spine is essential to create an unimpeded conduit from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. This is not a matter of religious dogma or esoteric philosophy. It is grounded in fundamental anatomy. A curved spine compresses the nerves and impedes the flow of cerebrospinal fluid. Conversely, a straightened spine ensures unimpeded circulation. Ensure your base is firmly grounded, your shoulders are relaxed, and your chin is slightly tucked to align the cervical vertebrae. Gently touch the roof of your mouth with your tongue, just behind your front teeth. This practice, taught for millennia, serves to complete the energetic circuit between the body's anterior and posterior energetic pathways. It is a simple, direct, and effective technique. The work commences with direct perception, not mere imagination. At the base of your spine, where the sacrum bone resides, there is a tangible accumulation of heat. This is not a product of your imagination. Rather, the concentrated network of nerve endings in this area responds to focused attention with heightened metabolic activity. Prioritize feeling the sensation, with visualization coming at a later stage. This distinction between experiencing what is actually occurring and conjuring an idealized scenario separates genuine practice from mere spiritual fantasy. Deep, rhythmic breathing is an indispensable element, serving as the engine that drives the entire process. Each complete inhalation creates pressure differentials within the thoracic and abdominal cavities, which directly influence the movement of cerebrospinal fluid. Inhale deeply through your nose, hold for a brief period, and exhale completely through your mouth. With each breath cycle, you generate subtle currents that ascend the spinal column. The fluid that cradles your brain and spinal cord is indeed moved in waves, influenced by your breathing. The mantras employed follow a precise logical structure. The mantra I-O-U embodies a Gnostic formula representing the Divine Trinity. The initial sound symbolizes the Father, the second, the Son, and the third, the Holy Spirit. In practical application, each vowel sound resonates within a specific bodily region. The first sound, akin to the E in C, vibrates in the head, inducing cranial resonance. The second sound, similar to the A in Father, expands through the chest, opening the heart center. The third sound, like the O in Home, descends to the abdomen, activating the lower energetic centers. The mantra Enri, derived from the Latin phrase Ignis natura renova integra, meaning fire renews nature integrally, requires each letter to be articulated with its original Latin intonation. The Sanskrit mantra Om Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopijana Vallabhaya Svaha preserves its traditional Vedic pronunciation, invoking the Christ consciousness to facilitate the energetic ascent. At this juncture, specific visualization becomes paramount. You are not envisioning abstract light or generalized energy. Instead, visualize a sacred golden oil, viscous like luminous honey, beginning its journey from the base of your spine. As it ascends, vertebra by vertebra, each of the 33 segments acts as a crucible of transformation, refining this substance. What begins as dense and oily at the base becomes progressively more refined and radiant with each upward stage. The esteemed teacher, Samael Aun Weor, emphasized the importance of not skipping steps. Consciously feel the energy as it traverses each segment. When this force encounters blockages, which it inevitably will, you are to breathe through them. Avoid force or violent pushing. Simply breathe. Maintain the visualization, harmonizing it with the specific mantra associated with that particular energetic center. Within the second chakra, where desire creates an impediment, the mantra gradually works to dissolve the resistance. In the solar plexus, where anger has become entrenched, the vibrational frequency softens the blockage. Infinite patience is required. You are meticulously undoing patterns established over a lifetime, and potentially over many lifetimes. The critical juncture occurs when the energy reaches the center of the brain, the thalamus. This small chamber, situated between the pineal and pituitary glands, serves as the true altar of the human temple. Visualize this area progressively filling with the refined oil, now radiating like liquid gold. It is not diffuse illumination or an abstract colored aura. but a dense, luminous substance that fills a distinct space within the core of your head. Feel it pulsate with each heartbeat and expand with each breath, eventually overflowing and bathing the entirety of your brain. According to Gnostic teachings, at this moment, the three internal masters converge. The solar channel, Pingala, known to the Hindus, conveys the golden wisdom of the divine through the right cerebral hemisphere. The lunar channel, Ida, offers the incense of unconditional love through the left hemisphere. The central channel, Sushumna, delivers the myrrh of conscious sacrifice, enabling the dissolution of the ego and the resurrection of consciousness. These are not mere symbolic representations. They describe actual bioelectric currents that converge at the center of the brain. The transformations that occur are neither subtle nor gradual once this process is completed. Abilities previously considered paranormal begin to manifest naturally, such as clairvoyance, the capacity to perceive beyond the ordinary visual spectrum; clairaudience, the ability to hear frequencies beyond common range; intuition amplified to the level of precognition; lucid dreams that possess greater vividness than waking reality; and out-of-body experiences that occur spontaneously during deep meditative states. However, these are incidental outcomes, not the primary objectives. The true achievement is the permanent activation of brain regions that are normally dormant. Neuroscience has established that we utilize only a fraction of our brain's full potential, not the mythical 10%, but certainly not the entirety. As the sacred oil completes its circuit and saturates the brain, previously inactive synapses begin to form connections. Entirely new neural networks are constructed. You are not transforming into something fundamentally different. Rather, you are awakening your inherent potential. The implications for everyday life are profound. Superficial relationships become unsustainable as you perceive underlying pretenses, deceptions, and egoic games with an acute and sometimes painful clarity. Simultaneously, genuine compassion develops as you recognize the internal struggles that everyone faces. Work that lacks purpose becomes intolerable, but clarity emerges regarding your true calling. The incessant need for external entertainment diminishes as the meditative state becomes more engaging than any external distraction. This process continues to deepen with each successive lunar cycle. It is not a singular accomplishment that, once attained, remains static. Each month, as the moon returns to your astrological sign, you are presented with a new opportunity to ascend the 33 steps with enhanced mastery. The sacred oil becomes more refined, the ascent smoother, and the transformations more profound. Ultimately, the Christic state, where consciousness is permanently anchored in the crown energetic center, becomes your natural condition. You possess within you all that is necessary for this realization. These instructions have been faithfully preserved through millennia. The lunar cycles continue to offer monthly opportunities. The sole variable is your personal decision to apply this knowledge with unwavering discipline and persistence until the inner Christ definitively awakens within the illuminated thalamus of your own cranial temple. The sacred oil, secreted by your master glands, continues its descent through the spinal column in continuous cycles, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A significant portion of this vital substance is typically dissipated through ordinary metabolic functions. George Carey's research documented that the amount lost in a single day would suffice for an entire month of conscious work if it were properly conserved and transmuted. However, this knowledge has never been imparted in conventional educational institutions, religious organizations, or academic settings. Why has this crucial information been deliberately fragmented and kept separate. The ancient Egyptian priesthood structured their 33 initiatory degrees in correspondence with the vertebrae of the spine. Hindu yogis meticulously mapped the path of Kundalini, which coils precisely 3.5 times, mirroring the anatomical coiling of the vagus nerve. Jesus Christ publicly demonstrated this process by living for 33 years and ultimately expiring at Golgotha, the place of the skull, signifying the final transmutation. Are these mere coincidences, or a deliberate map left in plain sight for those with the insight to comprehend it? Samael Aun Weor meticulously deciphered what had been scattered. The pineal and pituitary glands are recognized as the biological progenitors of the inner Christ, which is ultimately born in the thalamus. The sacred mantras IOU, Enri, and Klim Krishnaya generate specific vibrational frequencies that induce alterations in the chemical composition of the cerebrospinal fluid. The moon exerts an influence on periods of heightened glandular activity through its magnetic effect on the calcified crystals present within the pineal gland. Every piece of this intricate puzzle aligns perfectly when one understands that the human body itself serves as the temple, the laboratory, and the altar where the supreme alchemical work takes place. Modern medical science corroborates certain aspects of this understanding, aspects that warrant a more thorough investigation. The pineal gland contains magnetite and demonstrably responds to magnetic fields. The production of endogenous dimethyltryptamine, DMT, during profound mystical experiences has been documented. Alterations in cerebrospinal fluid composition during deep meditative states have been observed. Brain hemisphere synchronization during mantra chanting has been scientifically confirmed. The evidence exists within published research, yet no one connects these disparate findings because doing so would challenge established paradigms. The complete protocol is readily accessible. Identify the lunar period using any astronomical almanac. Undertake 3 days of physical preparation, including the elimination of intoxicants and dietary moderation. Engage in 2.5 days of intensified practice, incorporating mantras, rhythmic breathing, and visualization of the golden thalamus. Progressively dissolve psychological impediments that obstruct each energetic center. Facilitate the gradual ascent through the 33 vertebral degrees. This is not a belief system. It is a precise spiritual technology. So why has this profound knowledge remained concealed for millennia? Because individuals who successfully activate the inner Christ do not require intermediaries. They do not pay tithes, adhere to rigid dogmas, nor do they fear hypothetical hells or await promised paradises. They achieve a state of spiritual sovereignty, rendering them impervious to control through conventional religious manipulation tactics. A fully Christified human being represents a significant threat to any system predicated on hierarchy and subservience. The consequences of this energetic activation are irreversible and demonstrably verifiable. These include heightened activity in previously dormant brain regions, synchronization of the cerebral hemispheres, elevated production of neurotransmitters associated with expanded states of consciousness, amplified perception extending beyond the ordinary sensory spectrum, and access to abilities previously classified as paranormal, which are, in reality, the normal functioning of a brain operating at its peak capacity. The parallel psychological work is not merely supplementary, it is fundamentally protective. Every unresolved psychological defect becomes amplified as the energetic force ascends. Desire can morph into obsession, anger into outright violence, and pride into megalomania. This is precisely why numerous spiritual figures have succumbed to public scandal. They have awakened this potent force without first purifying their inner landscape. The gradual monthly ascent facilitates a systematic approach to addressing each internal flaw, ensuring that the energy finds clear pathways for its upward journey. However, there exists a catalyst that can exponentially amplify the entire process: the deep meditative state. In this state, brain waves decelerate to theta and delta frequencies while maintaining waking consciousness. During this profound immersion, the master glands maximize their secretions. The boundary between the conscious and unconscious mind dissolves, allowing the sacred oil to flow with amplified potency. Tibetan monks, Indian yogis, and Christian mystics have all experienced and documented this truth. Deep meditation is the key that unlocks the complete potential of this transformative process. It is within this specific state that true alchemy occurs. It is when the mind, body, and spirit converge in a unique frequency. It is when breath, mantra, and visualization unite in perfect synchrony. It is at this moment that the transmuted oil finally reaches the thalamus, and the inner Christ awakens within the cranial temple, not as a metaphorical concept, but as a measurable neurobiological event. All profound change originates from understanding your inherent role as a co-creator, and the sole avenue for connecting with this divine intelligence is through meditation. We have developed a suite of audio tools designed to assist you in accessing this elevated state of consciousness. To learn more and gain immediate access, please click the link displayed on the screen or located in the comments section. If this message resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments, stating, "This made sense to me."